London estate agent Foxtons has made it onto the FTSE list of the 250 largest companies on the stock exchange. The promotion comes just 2 months after it first floated on the market. It's the latest milestone in the history of the company, which has the so-called Marmite effect on both buyers and sellers, as Glenn Goodman explains.
It looked shiny and new.
We are a beautiful agency.
A bit flashy.
A bit pushy.
Far too expensive.
They're efficient, polite, they answer your calls.
And we think they're Foxtons are the embodiment of the slick and dashing modern estate agency, with their jaunty little cars and their healthy refreshments. Foxtons take exceptional pride in their appearance. They wouldn't let us film inside today. They said if we'd given more notice, they'd have washed the surfaces and the windows specially. But behind the plush sofas and the frivolous little touches, there's an aggressive business plan that has propelled them into the FTSE 250. An impressive achievement for a company that barely operates outside London.
From a stock market perspective, they do bring a very high level of professionalism to the estate agency market, which is typically viewed more as a cottage industry than playing in the world of high finance.
John Hunt opened his first branch in Notting Hill in 1981. The company expanded quickly, and in 2007 he sold it for £390 million. In September this year, the new owners floated it on the stock exchange, and now it's one of the 250 largest public companies in the UK. When John Hunt sold his company back in 2007, people thought he was a genius. He made himself hundreds of millions of pounds just before the property market crashed. But what virtually nobody was predicting back in those dark days was that the London property market would soon make a very swift recovery. That's exactly what happened, and John Hunt's company is now worth twice what he sold it for, almost £1 billion. All this success has come despite numerous attacks on Foxtons' reputation. Earlier this year, a new branch in Brixton was targeted by protesters complaining about high rents and creeping gentrification. Well, the yuppies are refusing to leave, and according to their current plans, they could soon have twice as many branches in the capital. Glenn Goodman, ITV News.
With me now is Henry Pryor, who's a property expert here in London. Thanks very much for coming in. So surely this is a reflection of how London has survived the credit crunch, surely?
Well, indeed, Foxtons' success very much. The foundations are London's housing boom, both sales and rentals. And ironically, it perhaps brings into focus the differences between those who own properties and are able to rent and afford the high rents that we have in the capital, and those that aren't. We know we've got record numbers on social housing waiting lists, and it does somewhat polarise the debate, as your clip just illustrated very well.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say, because it's a fact that some people will find hard to swallow if they're desperately trying to save for a deposit or desperately trying to find somewhere where they can afford to rent in London. So in fact, we're talking about the fact that we're out of the credit crisis, and this is why London's housing market is doing so well. A lot of people sit there go, really? That's not my experience.
Well, I think most people, if they're reading the local London paper or indeed watching your programme, will appreciate that the housing market has been on the up. In London and the South East, it has been described as being in something of a bubble. Although rents have come back slightly, interestingly, over the last quarter, still capital values are appreciating. And in many parts of London, certainly, there are now bidding situations for the few houses that are coming to the market.
So I guess it's a great time to go into a career as an estate agent, I can imagine.
Well, there appears to be, there were reports, in fact, earlier this year that there were over 50,000 people employed in estate agency in our part of the country. Whether that's correct or not, who knows? But certainly we're seeing a resurgence. And as Foxtons illustrates very well, along with other publicly listed companies, like Hamptons, John D. Wood, for example, it's a good time for those companies to be going out and getting money, getting finance to be able to develop their businesses.
Now, there are claims that the Help to Buy scheme will fuel those rises within the capital in terms of housing prices. What do you think about that?
Well, I've been, since the Chancellor sat down at his spring budget, somewhat of a critic of Help to Buy. I think it's slightly unnecessary when you look at the capital limit of it, of £600,000. The sort of people that would be looking to spend that sort of money on properties in London perhaps arguably aren't in need of the taxpayers' assistance. I think that there is a place for it, and certainly the coalition government to be congratulated that they put some foundations under the housing market, but clearly not everyone's been a winner.
OK, well, Henry, thanks very much for joining us.